question is from Reverend James Bhagwan from the Pacific Conference of Churches. Over to you, Reverend.
Thank you so much for your reflections earlier. In the context of the 2050 strategy and the high prevalence of gender-based violence in our region, including Aotearoa New Zealand and the land now called Australia, what commitments and shifts do we need to see when looking at the review of the Pacific Leaders Gender Equality Declaration and the collaboration between governments, crop agencies, development partners, but most importantly, civil society and faith-based organizations who work on the ground? And noting that it's not about to or for, but with, as we heard earlier. And how do we also ensure that being socially inclusive doesn't mean that we're being generally inclusive without recognizing specific needs and issues from a cross-cutting perspective? Thank you.
Thank you for asking that, and I was reflecting as you were asking, Reverend, that you probably could answer it better than the people on the stage, right? So gender-based violence is we see in every society, in every country, and it is tragic, it is costly, it's hurtful, and it means that there are too many, particularly women and girls, who are unable to fulfil their potential. So there's an individual human cost to that. And then there's a broader social cost and an economic cost. And I think your question was something like, you know, how do we change that? And you know, we had a particularly high-profile murder of a wife and a mother and her children by a former partner, and we had a vigil outside of Parliament House, and the sun was going down, and I remember thinking at the time, I'm 50, just over 50. I thought, I've been going to vigils like this for 30 years. So I think the first step is acknowledging, certainly in Australia, and I suspect in many societies, its existence and its prevalence, and it's that it's not confined to one group, one economic class, one culture, and to really confront it, I think requires such engagement and collaboration between different parts of society. So there is the rule of law, which, and I agree with the Prime Minister that you have to have that as a baseline. But as you know, and I commend the work that you and others do within the churches, you have to reinforce that norm, that principle, through a whole range of different parts of civil society. Because leadership is, there are so many ways in which leadership is shown in the community. Elected leaders, religious leaders, community leaders, sports leaders. So I don't pretend to have all the answers on this. I think it is good that we talk about it in the ways that we do now. It is good that we've had gender equality declarations. It's good that it'd be good if leaders remain seized of it. It's really important it's in the 2050 strategy. All of those things are steps forward. But I suppose my observation would be, and what I'd be interested in talking about in the months and years to come, is how you actually work as between government and civil society in order to change our standards of behaviour. Because, the standards of behaviour we expect of ourselves are in part legally regulated, but they're also ethically regulated and spiritually and normatively by the communities in which we live and culturally. So all of those frameworks need to be utilised if we actually get serious about addressing it. And, you know, I think we have to be. We don't want this happening to our sisters and our daughters. We don't want the cost in human terms and economic terms and social terms. But anyway, thank you for the question. It's very important.